You've been told that just like making diamonds, pressure makes great leaders. That the more pressure you can absorb, the more powerful you are. That carrying the weight of everyone else proves your strength. But here's the secret no one tells you. Pressure doesn't create trust. Presence does. Pressure may get short-term results, but presence builds long-term loyalty. Pressure makes people perform. Presence makes people believe. Pressure creates compliance. Presence creates connection. And that's the real power of leadership. Not how much pressure you can carry, but how much presence you can embody. From the outside, pressure looks impressive. You're always busy, always in demand, always holding it together. But your team feels it. Your family feels it. Your body feels it. Because pressure leaks. It leaks into your tone. It leaks into your decisions. It leaks into the atmosphere of the room. And people don't follow pressure. They protect themselves from it. That's why so many executives struggle. They think their job is to absorb more stress than anyone else. But stress is not leadership. Stress is survival. Presence is leadership. Presence is what people remember. Presence is what people trust. So let's talk about what it really means to lead with presence instead of pressure. Presence is not just being in the room. Presence is being in the moment. It's your nervous system signaling safety instead of stress. It's your energy communicating trust instead of tension. It's your voice carrying clarity instead of chaos. Presence is leadership that people can feel. And let's align on this. When I talk about presence, I'm not talking about being religious. I'm not talking about following any type of religion or changing your belief system. I'm simply talking about leading as your full, integrated self. Because pressure comes from fragmentation and compartmentalization. From splitting your identity into the acceptable leader on the outside and the restless soul on the inside. Presence comes from alignment. When your inner world and your outer leadership finally match, there's no split to manage. That alignment is what creates stability people can feel. Spiritual growth matters in leadership because it fuses who you are with how you lead. It makes you trustworthy without trying to prove it. And here's why this matters. The leader sets the emotional weather. If you walk in heavy with pressure, the room clouds over. If you walk in grounded with presence, the room stabilizes. People take their cue from you. Your team regulates through you. That's the real secret no one writes in the leadership manuals. The leader is the atmosphere. So how do you shift from pressure to presence? First, you have to see the cost of pressure-driven leadership. Pressure makes you reactive instead of responsive. You jump at problems instead of guiding solutions. You operate in survival mode instead of strategic mode. Pressure isolates you because no one feels safe bringing you truth when you're always rushed, sharp, or distracted. People withhold. People retreat. People protect themselves. Pressure drains innovation because creativity doesn't survive in fear. When pressure is high, risk-taking is low, and your team stops dreaming. Pressure creates burnout, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Because if you lead with pressure, your people carry pressure too. So ask yourself, what atmosphere are you creating? One of stress and survival? Or one of presence and stability? Because the cost of pressure is trust. And trust is the currency of leadership. Now let's talk about presence. Because presence is not soft. Presence is strong. Presence is sharp. Presence is powerful. Presence means you can walk into a room and steady it. Not because you're barking orders, but because you are centered. Presence communicates, I am here. I am clear. I am grounded. I am trustworthy. Presence turns authority into influence. It transforms compliance into commitment. It creates cultures where people bring their best because they feel safe to do so. So how do you lead with presence? Let's break it down into 3 shifts. The first shift is from multitasking to single tasking. Pressure thrives in distraction. Presence thrives in focus. When you split your attention, people feel it. They know you're half there and half gone. And half presence is no presence at all. But when you give someone your full attention, they know they matter. When you give a task your full attention, it gets done with clarity. Presence requires focus. The second shift is from speed to space. Pressure always pushes for faster. Presence creates room to breathe. When you slow down enough to think, you make better decisions. When you pause before reacting, you create stability. When you build margin into your schedule, you model sustainability. Speed without space creates mistakes. Space within speed creates wisdom. The third shift is from proving to embodying. Pressure comes from needing to prove yourself. Presence comes from embodying your values. When you're in pressure, every meeting is a test. Every interaction is about showing you belong. Every decision is about defending your worth. But when you embody your values, there's nothing to prove. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. And you lead from alignment, not anxiety. And here's something leaders often overlook. Presence is contagious. When you walk into a room carrying pressure, everyone else tenses up. When you walk in carrying presence, everyone else exhales. Your state becomes the state of the team. Your nervous system regulates theirs. Your clarity creates theirs. That's why presence is more than a personal practice. It's an organizational advantage. Pressure creates turnover, burnout, and fear. Presence creates loyalty, innovation, and trust. When you steady yourself, you steady the culture. And that ripple is what transforms companies from the inside out. These shifts sound simple, but they're radical in practice. Because most of corporate culture is built on pressure, on constant urgency, on leaders who look busy instead of leaders who feel present. That's why presence is the rarest power in the room. It's not common, but it's unforgettable. Think about the leaders you've trusted the most. The ones who didn't just give you orders, but gave you confidence. The ones who made you feel safe enough to tell the truth. The ones who steadied the storm without shouting over it. That's presence. That's what stays with people. That's what transforms leadership from management into legacy. So let me ask you, are you leading with pressure or are you leading with presence? Because one creates survival, the other creates stability. One drains trust, the other builds it. One leaves emptiness, the other leaves legacy. And here's the truth. You don't need more pressure to prove yourself. You need more presence to be yourself. Presence is the leadership edge that no resume can ever capture. Presence is the advantage that no title can guarantee. Presence is the secret that changes everything. The question every leader should carry is this: what will people remember when you're no longer in the room? Titles get reassigned. Projects get forgotten. Results get surpassed. But presence leaves an imprint. It shapes how people feel about themselves when they're with you. Think about it. Years from now, no one will say, "She handled more pressure than anyone else." They will say, "She was the leader who saw me, who steadied me, who made me better." That's the difference between pressure and presence. Pressure dissolves when the moment passes. Presence multiplies through the people you touched. That is legacy. And it's built one present moment at a time. If this resonates, subscribe. Share this video with another woman in leadership who is ready to stop leading with pressure and start leading with presence. And come back every Wednesday as we continue building the model of the aligned executive. Because the world doesn't need more leaders under pressure. It needs more leaders with presence.